What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Cole. Today we're going to talk about the suspension on my F150 Overland build. Alright, so I kind of want to give you a deep dive into the suspension that I have on my truck right now because I've been getting a lot of those questions, and it's probably one of the most asked questions I get is the lift kit or suspension that I run on my truck. So what I do have on there is the Rough Country Vertex suspension kit, and it's a 3-inch lift kit from them. So I'm going to kind of show you what I like about it, my experience with it so far, and kind of give you some recommendations if you look into getting this as well. So my truck itself, this is a 2019 F150. It's got the 3.5 liter EcoBoost. And I do have that Rough Country Vertex suspension, 3-inch lift like I said. I'm able to run 35-inch tires with it, and I run a 17-inch wheel. So if you ever find yourself on Rough Country's website, the Vertex part of it is actually just has to do with the strut and shocks themselves. So it's actually a 3-inch lift kit from Rough Country, but you can get multiple different options. First of all, they have 2-inch lift options, 3, 4, 6, and so on. Not all of them offer the Vertex upgrade, but as you look at those lift kit options, on some of the drop-down options, you can then select the Vertex reservoirs, which is the highest option they give you inside of those lift kits. So really when it comes down to it, their Vertex option or upgrade on those lift kits is their biggest and baddest shock upgrade that they offer, the biggest suspension upgrade that they offer. And it comes with adjustable reservoirs, and we'll get into that a little more. So the adjustable reservoirs are my favorite part of this suspension. On another truck I had Icon Stage 4 suspension, and even that didn't have adjustable reservoirs. And I'll get into how that compared to this later on in the video. But the adjustable reservoirs are super cool, and it's such a nice feature to have on a slightly more budget-friendly suspension. I don't know if budget's quite the right word. It runs for about $2,500, which is totally cheaper than some of the big name brand options. So I would say it's on the more affordable side, but I don't like calling it a budget option anymore because of how much I've enjoyed the suspension and how much it performs like some of the big name brand suspension that I've had as well, or cars that I've rode in that have had that suspension. So for the adjustable reservoirs, you have an independent adjustment on each 4 corners of your vehicle, and you have 1 through 8 clicks. So 1 being the softest adjustment and 8 being the firmest. I find for the most part, I'm typically in the range of 1 to 3 on all 4 of my adjustments, just because it's such big, beefy, Baja-like suspension that I find that I can use that softest one and still have plenty of travel and not feel like I'm running out of my suspension even at faster speeds. But that's going to be totally different for everyone. They make this kit for multiple different trucks, so I'm sure the truck you put it on as well as the driving style you have might change the level of adjustment that you might want to use on yours. So it's definitely worth, if you ever own this suspension, playing with it all the time to try and figure out which one that is best for you. The only times I ever really put it way high, like up in 7 and 8, is one if I'm towing, which is really nice because this is an upgraded suspension. My truck sits a little bit more like a Raptor now. So if you've ever seen Raptors going down the road or sitting in a parking lot, most Raptors kind of have a Raptor squat is kind of what it's called, where the back's just a little bit lower, kind of like a trophy truck look. I have found that once the suspension was installed, the rear end of my truck does sag just a little bit. It comes up more if I choose to adjust those reservoirs to make it firmer. It's not super bad at all, it's just a tiny bit, and I don't really feel like it makes any performance difference because of that. So like I just mentioned, if I do choose to tow something, if I'm towing a larger trailer or something, it is nice. I'll turn almost all of these up to 7 or 8, and then it almost completely eliminates that squat, which I think is a big advantage. I see a lot of Raptors towing boats and big trailers and stuff. If you've ever seen a Raptor pulling a trailer, they just sag super low. as you can expect, because that suspension is built to rally inside of a Raptor. So having that adjustment almost gives you the best of both worlds, where you can turn it up really high, and I feel like I can tow just fine still without having that really bad squat in the back. So that's been a big benefit, to be able to tow like that and then still be able to have, in a way, Baja or rally type suspension. The only other time that I will go above 3 or so clicks is depending on the gear loadout I have in my bed. So over my bed, I have crossbars from KB Voodoo and a pretty heavy tent. It's a full aluminum hard shell from 23-0. And I have crossbars on it with max tracks and an Apache case full of gear. So quite a bit of weight over the bed there. If I tend to load it up really heavy with gear in the back, then I'll get a little bit more squat. The only times I find it necessary to then turn those adjustments up is if I have enough camping gear back there that we are going for a few days. It seems like at that point I have big enough coolers and extra gear that that's when the weight really hits, and I'll turn it up to 5 or 6 or so. But otherwise, I'm always in a range of about 1 to 3 on the adjustment clicks. So where this suspension has really surprised me the very most is at higher speeds. Although it still does really good at lower speeds, I will say that's maybe the one thing it doesn't do quite as good at, is I feel like your lower speed suspension is better on some of the bigger name brands like Icon, Fox, King, whatever, there's a ton of them. It's still way, way better than stock and an impressive suspension, but that lower speed stuff might not be quite as good. But at high speeds, this suspension just seems to perform better and better the harder you push it, which is really incredible that it can do that well on that end of it. Because most of the time, if you are on OEM suspension or you're on a more budget-friendly option, you can typically outrun that suspension pretty quick the faster you go. Whereas I feel like every time I push this truck, I push it harder and harder, and that suspension is always there and always delivers. The other thing that I was wildly impressed with, and I'll put up some videos on the screen, is how incredible it allows this truck to articulate now. We're talking a full-size truck. This is an F150. Let's be honest, Ford didn't design these to rock crawl and flex really well. But with this suspension, it actually does pretty well. So I took this thing up to an off-road course designed to flex and articulate your truck. And I was blown away at how much flex and articulation this thing had, how much down travel the suspension had as I worked over these obstacles on this off-road course. We also took a Ram TRX on this course as well, and I'm just adding this in here for comparison, but the down travel on those TRXs is incredible. They have this wild suspension, and if you've ever seen those trucks, they're just phenomenal trucks. But I figured I'd bring that up because the down travel on my F-150 was nearly as good as the insane down travel on a TRX. So pretty cool to see how much flex I really had on an off-road course that was designed to kind of test the limits of that on vehicles. Okay, I mentioned this once before a little earlier, but price-wise, if you go right onto their website, they have it listed at around $2,500 for this whole 3-inch lift kit with the adjustable reservoirs, the Vertex option. And then you're just gonna have to include whatever cost you would have either doing it yourself or to have an auto shop install that near you. So you'd have to kind of figure in that price as well, but that's pretty typical. So pretty affordable compared to some of the other ones at $2,500. So some of those bigger name brands, you're gonna pay $4 grand, a lot of times even more than that. And I feel like the value that you get from this system has been so worth it to me. I'm so glad that I chose to upgrade to this. With that said, before I installed that system, I had a ready lift on here, so I wasn't just factory F-150. I had that 3.5-inch ready lift on. If you're not familiar with those, they're basically a larger version of a leveling kit. So rather than just blocks that bring up the front, they give you upper control arms as well as blocks to give you that extra inch or so to be at about 3.5 inches of a lift. They're a pretty good option because they're even cheaper, but you just have to realize that all it's doing is lifting your truck, giving you a little bit more ground clearance, because other than that, you are factory OEM shocks and struts, so your suspension is going to be the exact same. The other suspension that I've had quite a bit of time under was actually on a Tacoma, so I get that those are two very different types of trucks, so it's not quite a fair comparison. But I had an Icon Stage 4 lift on a Toyota Tacoma, which is about as nice a suspension as you can get, and it was just in all ways an incredible suspension. The only downfall is it didn't have adjustable reservoirs, so I really love that even being on a more budget-friendly suspension, having adjustable reservoirs, even my Icon didn't have that option, as incredible as it was. For the money, the gap between a Stage 4 Icon suspension setup and this rough country one is very minimal. Your price gap is way bigger because this is much more affordable. But performance-wise, like, this is dang near as good as that Icon suspension, which is why I've been so happy to have installed it. So if you're looking into getting it, I would totally recommend it. Like, I don't think that you'll ever regret getting it, especially because of the fact when you decide to spend a little bit less money on something like that, typically you can expect to get what you pay for, and that's always been true and will continue to be true. But I found that this suspension way outperforms what I paid for it. So yeah, go ahead and look into that. That's about all I have for you guys today. Appreciate you guys watching the videos. I put out stuff and content on my truck all the time. This upcoming year, I'll be posting every Tuesday at 7 p.m. I'll have a little bit more official schedule this year, so look forward to those videos. If you're subscribed, make sure to turn on the notifications so you can see those videos every Tuesday. If you're not subscribed, would love it if you would come be a part of my channel if this is stuff that you're interested in watching, and we'll see you next time.